Your marketing agency said you got 200 leads last month, but where are the new patients? Too often, those big numbers don't mean real people are sitting in your chairs. Welcome to the Grow Ortho live stream. I'm your host today, Zach Dykes, joined by Sawyer Burgee, HIP's very own senior paid search specialist. Welcome to the show, Sawyer.
Hey Zach, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be on.
Guys, today we're tackling a big question. Are the leads your agency shows you actually real? A lot of practices see reports full of clicks and impressions, but that doesn't always equal new patient starts. That's why I've got Sawyer here to break down what really counts as a lead and what doesn't, and how to make sure your ad dollars are bringing in patients, not just page views. Sorry, before we jump into the meat and potatoes, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your experience in the paid search industry.
Absolutely. I've been in the paid search industry for about 5 years now, specifically focused on lead generation. And it's been a great pleasure to be with HIP, and we've really come a long way with the processes and procedures that we have. And I'm super excited to share some of them today.
Well, I'm excited that you're here. We're going to be diving into all of this. Everybody that's watching, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. We come to you live here and on all of the different platforms. We're live on Facebook, Instagram. We're everywhere. So make sure to share this with an orthodontic practice or a dental practice that could use this knowledge, because HIP is here to help and create just amazing practices. So let's jump into this, Sawyer. When we talk about conversion actions in Google Ads, what are we actually talking about?
Yeah, so conversions are essentially the goals behind what our campaigns are, and they can consist of many different things. Within Google, there's a bunch that you can select, but we create these conversion actions to track what we want to track as a lead. So we set them up ourselves, and the two that we use here at HIP are primarily calls. Well, not primarily. The only two that we use here at HIP are calls and then lead form submissions. There's a host of others that you can choose, such as app downloads, purchases, stuff that doesn't really apply to ortho. But those are the main two that we use here at HIP to help get those leads generated.
So why is that important? Why do you draw the line there with calls and form submissions? Not why isn't a click considered a lead?
Yeah, so we really want to align our goals with, a practice's goals. A practice, for the most part, they're not looking for clicks. They're looking for, people to come and schedule appointments. They're looking for contacts, people to give their information. They're looking to answer some phone calls, have tangible contact information that they can do actions with, whether that be, reach out back to them or schedule them on their appointment. So if we just count clicks, we're kind of, diluting the line of what we're actually trying to do and what we're trying to provide for the practice. So we focus anytime you've like any connection to the office, whether that be a form submission or a call. Those are the two, and that's the reason why.
So instead of, padding the stats or whatever, giving a fancy, flashy number, actually having things that the practice can take action on.
Absolutely, exactly.
And I think that's huge because, as we get through this live stream, is a lot of practices don't do that. And something that we at HIP we don't do is we don't even count like second time callers or form fills. That is huge. But why do we do that? What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so we're focused solely on new patients. We want to gain new patients. Now, existing patients are great. A lot of times they can be, if it's a mom and she's an existing patient, like her oldest son is an existing patient, she has two more kids that she wants to get braces for. That's great, but we don't necessarily want to spend money on that lead again, because she's probably just going to reach out via organic channels like your website, your Google business profile. So we're trying to get more of those moms with kids, when we're trying to reach out to the community. We're trying to find that low funnel, people ready to convert, and new customers versus keep spending money on repeat customers, existing customers. While that's great, we know there's better channels for them that don't cost money that they could convert from. So we're trying to broaden our scope here and really get you new patients and expand your practice.
And I think that's huge because if somebody's already in the practice, they're already, already a patient, they already have one child, they might have another one that's in line to get braces after that. They already know how everything works. And instead of tossing more money at them, they already know that if, as long as everything's going well, they're going to bring, little Johnny right after Susie to get his braces. And I think that's big because a lot of people, it's like shotgunning money into these ad budgets, and it's like, oh, well, I've seen this ad, but I'm already, a patient here. Like, that's not helping the practice at all.
Correct. Yeah, it's counterintuitive because there, like I said, there's some other avenues that would be better served at grabbing those patients again.
So let's go a little bit further, and I want us to define what a real lead is. So, how does HIP's definition of a lead stack up compared to what other agencies usually count?
Yeah, we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but we if they contact your office at all, we want that to be counted as a lead. If they call your office and a new patient that calls your office, a new patient that fills out a form to schedule, you have tangible contact information. We want to count that as a lead. Where that differs from other people's perspectives and other agencies and how they do things, a lot of times they'll set it up in a way where they're going to count the website. Say there's a landing page where the form is, they'll count the click to get on that landing page as a lead, even though they didn't submit a form or actually give you any information. They're going to count that as a lead, which, I mean, it's not like rocket science. That's going to inflate your numbers. That's going to lower your cost per lead. You're going to be able to say as an agency, yeah, we got you way more leads, but to the practice and the back end, are they actually seeing the same thing? Well, no, because not everybody that visits a landing page is going to fill out a form. We have tons of data on that. So that's where it differs. Some will count, anything like you click the ad, a link within a landing page. They'll count a click on the button to submit a form versus our methods where we put code on a landing page and only count it as a lead until that form is submitted. So post submission is when we count the form as a conversion.
I think that's huge because if you're a millennial or younger, you probably have watched this episode of SpongeBob, so you might know where I'm going here, where King Neptune challenges SpongeBob to a hamburger cook-off because he doesn't believe that SpongeBob could be this good of a cook and everything. And he makes like a ton, like enough hamburgers to literally feed this whole stadium. And SpongeBob makes one hamburger within that time. And he, King Neptune, guys, we're talking about SpongeBob here, so just go with it. Just imagine, all right? He gives all of these hamburgers to people, and he was like, oh, clearly I have one. And then people start eating this hamburger, and it's just garbage. It's not any good. But then he tastes SpongeBob's burger, and it's amazing tasting. And that's kind of the same thing with your leads. Just because you have this huge number isn't actually putting money in your bank account.
Exactly. You're not realizing what you're seeing. There's confliction between what your agency is telling you and what you're actually seeing. You don't feel it, and they can't give you an explanation as to, you'll ask them, well, why am I seeing this? And they're like, I don't know, we're getting you the leads. But it's because they have it set up differently and they define leads differently than you.
So if I'm an agent, now if I'm a practice out there and I'm like, man, that sounds a lot like what I'm getting. What are some common vanity metrics that you have seen padding reports to, clients?
Yeah, so the there's like a big three, I would say: impressions, clicks, and cost per lead. And I'll touch on each of them. So impressions, obviously, for those of you who don't know, an impression, it just means that someone saw your ad. So someone searched a keyword that you have running. So I'll do an example. You searched orthodontist near me, and let's just say hip orthodontics is our practice. Hip orthodontics comes up at the top. You don't have to click on it or anything. Just because it appeared, that counts as one impression. It could be that it loaded all the way at the bottom of the screen. You didn't actually see it, but it did load on the page. It would still be counted as an impression. So that's an impression. Clicks is obviously they're just clicking on your ad. So they're both important. Impressions are super important because without an impression, without getting your ad out there, you can't do anything else. Without getting a click, you can't get them on your landing page so they can convert and so on. And then the third one is cost per lead. Basically, you're saying we gave you, like, if a company gives us a practice gives us $1,000 for the month, and we get 10 leads, that means it was 10 out of 1,000, so $100 a lead. So that's the CPL side of it. And those are the main three that they will bolster like crazy within a report, and they'll send them to you, and they'll say, they sounds super flashy, telling someone that, your ad was seen 7,000 times this month. You have 7,000 impressions, you have 27 clicks, your cost per lead is $25, and then that's all they'll tell you. And to someone who's not super familiar with marketing, that might sound really good, but really, that doesn't really tell us anything. Okay, so that tells us people are seeing our ads. What's happening after that? Like, what's going beyond that? What's happening in the back end? Are we actually seeing the return on all that money that we've put out there, or are we just keep funneling money into just showing our ad where no one actually does anything? Are our ads actually enticing? Are people actually interested in the service we provide? Just because you have impressions and clicks, that if they're not converting, that means if they're not converting and actually filling out forms or calling, that means they're not interested in what you have to offer.
Yeah, and I think it does come down to copy and all of that, the offer. But it's like if your agency is only reporting these things and you're not seeing like the return on investment and everything on that, the ROAS, I think that's big, which we'll get more into that in just a little bit. But I know I kind of said it with the SpongeBob thing, but I want your thought on it as well. Why is it actually better to have smaller amount of leads that are real leads instead of, oh, you had 17,000 people see your ad this month?
Yeah, I think your analogy from SpongeBob kind of sums it up. You could have 3,000 conversions, whatever, some lofty number, but you have to sift through all of those to find the good ones, and they might not be good ones. Now, at HIP, we believe that any lead that we get you is a good lead, and that's because we have processes and practices in place, settings in place to ensure that when we give you a lead, it's worthwhile. It's not going to be just a number that we're going to boast on. It's actually going to be tangible lead that you can make actions with. So the more leads you have, like I was saying, it's twofold. So number one, it's a gross, I would say it's considered a lie of what you're actually getting in return. But also, if they're getting you that many leads, they could have all kinds of keywords set up, super broad. So we target low funnel. They could be targeting the upper end of the funnel. And how that looks is, when we target low funnel, we're targeting people who are like, so they've gone through the process. High funnel would be, for instance, someone who's, my teeth hurt. That would be super high funnel. And then we go down the funnel a little bit more. My teeth need to be straight. And they go down a little bit more. What are braces? What's an orthodontist? Go down a little bit more. I need braces. Go down a little bit more. Orthodontist near me, or orthodontist city state. So we're trying to capture those people who are searching those low funnel terms. And if you're going to get a ton of leads, the easiest thing to do is go all the way up to the top of the funnel, and you're just getting all those leads who aren't even close to ready to convert. They're just wanting to know why their teeth hurt. So tons of leads, it doesn't always equate to, the low funnel. And then number two, you have to have the staff to handle all those calls. Now you're spending extra money and time and effort trying to reach out to all those people, and they're like, I was looking for a knee brace, I wasn't looking for braces. So th- it's it's entirely wasteful, I feel, to go completely high funnel and get as many leads as you possibly can and completely forego the quality of your leads.
Yeah, and I know some shadier practices, with other agencies. I've even had run-ins with other businesses that I've been a part of where they will target outside of the US for the CPL to be lower. And it's like somebody in India is not going to fly into the US to get, you know, braces. Like that's not, so making sure that where they're targeting is actually, a part of like your location and everything. I think, getting those settings that actually matter is huge. So, sorry, why does call length matter when you're deciding if it's a quality lead?
Yeah, so call length, when we set up our call conversions, there's a setting in there where you can determine how long you want the call to last before you count it as a conversion. So I would say best practice is above 5 seconds, because anything below that in the 0 second, like if you don't touch that and leave it at 0 seconds, you're going to get, spam calls. I mean, we all get calls like from spam where it says spam likely, we hang up. Well, that was on we were on the phone for 0 seconds. That call didn't ever connect. But if you leave it as that, as such, well, now you're going to have to count that as a conversion, and tell the partner, hey, you had 3 phone calls this week, 3 phone conversions. And they're like, we didn't talk to
Mm.
anyone. And if we did, it was like it dropped immediately. So above 5 seconds eliminates the spam. And we've actually seen too where if we notice that a lot of the calls are like, we've talked with the practice and we notice that a lot of the calls are kind of, iffy on if we should count them as conversions. We've upped that a little bit. And the more, and Google's algorithm is fluid with this, so the more you adjust conversions, the more Google will understand, okay, this person, that phone call lasted with longer with this type of person, let's try to focus more, because their algorithm is always trying to point to whatever your conversion goals are.
So it's, it's like finding the right people, like if you're, dating or whatever, like, yeah, you could date anybody and it's, pretty quick or whatever. But if you want something that lasts, a long term relationship, just like, orthodontics is, it takes a while. You're looking for the right people, the people, lower in the funnel, like you were saying, and it takes those very simple things to be in place.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's across the board too. It goes from keywords, it goes from the targeting that we have set in place. There's even settings about, are they located in this area that we're targeting, or are they located and interested in this area? So that's another setting. If you have that set, you could just be, I live in Tampa right now, I'm from Philadelphia. I am very interested in a lot of stuff Philadelphia, huge Philly sports guy. um, I could be serving People could be serving me Philly ads even though I'm not there, because I have interest in it,
Mm.
if they left that setting on. So definitely making sure your settings are across the bar. Just ask yourself, would this help lower the funnel? And that's what we do when we come up with our strategies, and it's proven to help get the best ROAS.
So, lowering the funnel, what is the difference between tracking a thank you page versus just a button click?
Yeah, so um, a lot of times on websites, so if they don't, we use landing pages here at HIP. So we create landing pages on our Practice Beacon software. And then when someone fills out a form, So they fill out all their information and they have to fill out all the fields in order to press the submit button. As soon as they press submit, the form is submitted, all their information gets created in a contact for them with Practice Beacon, an opportunity is created, and so on. But after they submit, then they get forwarded to a thank you page, and that thank you page has a code on it where then it will send a conversion back to Google. So it'll say one conversion. As soon as they hit that thank you page after submitting, one conversion. Where it becomes difficult is some practices, some agencies, some agencies will set it up where they'll do the button click action they'll count it on the button click action to get to the form. So if you're on a like a orthodontist homepage, sometimes it'll say, sign up here or schedule now or whatever. If you click that, that's immediately, as soon as you click that, it's going to send a conversion into Google and inflate our numbers, even if they don't fill out the form. Also, sometimes they'll have it on the submit button to the form. And let's say someone doesn't fill out all the form details and they'll spam the submit button. Well, as I was saying before, if you don't have the setting, where we're not counting every action, now I've got a ton of lead conversions coming into Google saying I have 4 conversions when really someone was just spamming a button. So we found it the best practice to just to set it up where once they hit that thank you page, then we get the conversion back versus the button, because a lot of stuff can happen with that button. Someone could accidentally click the button. It's very hard for someone to fill out all the information on a form, submit it, and then go to a thank you page on accident. So we try to eliminate all that extra stuff we don't want, eliminate the noise, and focus solely on the people who actually did it on purpose and weren't like spamming the button or it's hard to spam a page load action. So that's why we do it that way.
So, getting rid of the fluff, getting rid of, all of these things that at the end of the day don't matter. That's what I'm hearing over and over from each one of these questions. You kind of digging into it is, when you're looking at your ads, what are the true numbers? They're not inflated and everything. And can this person that filled out a form, can I actually call them? Can I actually get a hold of them right now and get them on the schedule? And
Exactly.
I think that's huge.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the point of what we do here. We like our goals should be aligned with the partners and practices that we serve. It should always be to grow their business, get them more schedules and more starts. And if that's not our goal along with their goals, then what's the point in marketing if you're not going to have the same goals? Like if we're going one direction and with our strategies and the partners going the complete opposite, there's going to be disconnect, and at the end of the day you're just going to waste a lot of money as a practice.
Yeah. I think I talked about it last week with Taylor. If you have two oxes, and they have the yoke on them and one's going one way, one's going the other way, it's going to twist that yoke and it's going to put both of them in a bind and it's going to be painful. And that's what bad marketing does for both sides because, at the end of the day, if you're with a good marketer, they want to see their partner do well, because if they do well, then guess what? The marketer's going to make more money because they're going to be able to put more into marketing and, vice versa. It's a healthy relationship instead of, it's symbiotic instead of being a virus.
Absolutely. And I think we'll probably touch on this more later, but that's the sad thing about a lot of agencies out there is a lot of times they try to mask that they're going a different direction than the practice with those vanity metrics. And that's kind of where this topic of our call comes in. It's not a lead, it's a lie. They start sharing all the fluff and all the great things that, the partner wants to hear, but they won't share the actual results behind the scenes that, where we can't tell you if this actually panned out to get you good ROAS, or number two, they know that it didn't get them good ROAS, but they're saying this because they're afraid they're going to cancel. And that's the
Mm.
big one. That they don't they'll tell the practice whatever they want to hear because, at the end of the day, the practice is paying them their money. So why would I tell them that, in the last 6 months, you made no money off of our ads? And that's where the dishonesty comes in. And without that accountability of visibility of what you're actually making through your ads, that's a very easy thing to get caught up on, and a very easy thing for a practice to get tripped up on. And often it happens a lot where they could be like, our marketing agency, I feel like they're not doing anything, but they always say they are. They always send the stuff and the numbers look great, but I just feel like it's nothing's happening. Where's the visibility? That's where you need to see. Where's the return? Where's the ROAS? Where is those numbers? And once you find that, you can find out a lot about that agency.
And like when I think about it, it's like all of these bad actors are out there and they give good marketing agencies kind of a bad rap. And I literally was talking to a partner a few weeks ago, and they're like, "Yeah, I went through 15 different marketing agencies." And I was like, "Holy!" Like I would have gave up after like three or four.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I was just like, man, how did you find 15 that were bad? But it's like when you have that kind of relationship, like you're like, yeah, marketing doesn't work. I've heard it all. Like Dr. Akuda, he was talking about, he's like, I've heard marketing agencies promise me more and more leads and everything. He's like, but HIP is the only one that actually has delivered me actual new patients in the office, because that's what actually matters. The adage is, if you got to track what you want. You got to inspect what you expect, and that's the thing that we do here, because a lot of agencies, they're chasing that low cost per lead,
Mhm.
and HIP's approach is totally different.
Yeah, one of the things that we see when we onboard a lot of new partners is they'll be used to a $20 cost per lead, or a $25 cost per lead, or an astronomically low cost per lead, and an enormous amount of leads. And then we have to tell them when they start, okay, just so you know, these are the expectations for what our cost per lead is in your area based on our data. And it's typically a lot higher because the intent is a lot higher. And it's not astronomical. It's still, we're making sure that we're getting you ROAS, despite the higher cost per lead than $25. But we're able to go in there and look at all their settings, and it definitely takes a mindset adjustment when some of these partners come in here, because they get so used to that. But then you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, well then why did you leave? If your other agency was getting you $25 cost per lead and you want that here, why'd you have to leave that other
Mm.
agency? If things were going so great there, this is what we have to do in order to ensure that we can get you that return. So that is definitely a huge mindset shift. If all we do is pump cost per lead, cost per lead, cost per lead, cost per lead, they could, I think we've said it at length already, but they'll adjust the conversion settings to be more loose. They'll go higher up in the funnel, people not ready to convert. They'll start targeting broader. Now we're targeting people with a 2-hour drive time to your practice. We're targeting words, open-ended words like braces, and you got people searching knee braces and calling about getting their knee brace for their ACL. There's all kinds of tactics they'll do to get that CPL lower. So if you solely focus on that, it's a major issue, major red flag.
So I know we brought up ROAS multiple times here. Why do you say return on ad spend, ROAS, matters more than just the total lead number?
I mean, at the end of the day, you could have, kind of what we've been saying. At the end of the day, you could have all the leads in the world and have no ROAS. Um, if you're putting money into anything, and you're basically lighting it on fire, it's going to waste. Well, what's the point of spending that money? Yeah, you get your name out there, but if you're not actually aligning with your goals, we have to go back to your goals. What's your goal as a practice? And sometimes the other agencies, and their practice goals will be just to get their name out there. That is definitely a valid goal, if that's what you want. If you just want to get your name out there, there's tons of agencies that can do that, and you don't need to go the form conversion route, the call conversion route. That's not what we do here primarily, but if you want to get your name out there, there's plenty of things you can do in that regard, that are valid. In that sense, it's not a lie, that because it's aligning with your goals. It all depends on what the partner's goals are, and for the most part, partners' goals are to get people in the seats, get treatment started, get schedules, and if we're not fulfilling that goal, then what's the point of spending all that money? Your ROAS is the most important thing that we look at. We check it every single week on our team. We check it monthly. We check it every 90 days, to determine, is what we're doing actually getting you return, and if it's not, we make proactive adjustments to ensure that we can get you that return. Because at the end of the day, if you're not getting that money, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that's like, if you want brand like recognition, what you're talking about is fine. But
Hmm. For
like
sure.
most people, like maybe when you're like you haven't even opened your doors, brand recognition might be a good play for a little bit. I'm not. I would rather have patients lining up than
Hmm.
even brand recognition. But it's like that's the play if you're going that way. You're not actually getting people in the doors, in the seats, brackets on teeth, actually making a difference in someone's lives. Like them just knowing that your name is, Zach Dykes, Zach Dykes Orthodontics. Like nobody cares at that point. It's like, oh yeah, well, has he put any, braces on anybody? Nope, but everybody knows his name.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point. And there's, if you're going to go the branding route where you're targeting your practice's name, there's so many other channels and venues to do that as well. So I mean, you could put a billboard up on a high traverse, highway, if you want to do that. So there's so many other ways to do that, but Google can actually get you things that those avenues can't. Like no one's going to fill out a form on a billboard. Um, so it's, use it for what it's good for. Go for that. If it can do that, why not utilize it?
Yeah.
But yeah, if your practice is just opening, the branding route might be a good idea. Or if you know that you're in a highly competitive area and someone is bidding on your name against you, and you know that you need to compete with them, and you see that they're hurting you, like every time in your organic that you're getting hurt, or in search results for your practice name, you see your competitors up there, right at the top. It could be because it correlates to one of the keywords in your name, but yeah, that could be another avenue where you'd want to target your own name. But like we were saying, the best bet is to target low funnel to get those new patients in there.
So I know here at HIP we have an amazing piece of software called Practice Beacon. So let's jump into that. Let's talk about Practice Beacon for a little bit. What exactly is it, and why is it important, and how does it actually function with our ads?
Yeah, that's like that's a huge loaded question. Practice Beacon is so it's not a bad question. It's such a vast question. It's so hard to answer because Practice Beacon is like the lifeblood of what we are at HIP. It sets us apart from all the other agencies. Um, it changed the game when I started working here. It changed the game on the feedback. The visibility of feedback is next to none from Practice Beacon. I mean, Practice Beacon is so going back a little bit, rewind, explaining what it is. Practice Beacon is our proprietary software. Excuse me, I can't speak. That we use at HIP, and all of our ad sources funnel all the leads that we get into that software. Also, web can also funnel into there if you have a HIP website. But when we set up landing pages through Practice Beacon, your forms, your surveys, the phone calls that we create are funneled into there. Sorry, the phone numbers that we create are funneled into there. We're able to do SMS campaigns, workflows to put leads in the right areas. to reach out to leads about reminders, like, hey, you signed up for a lead last week, just wondering, if you're still interested. Also, we can set up reminders for the practice themselves. This person just called, give them a call back, that type of stuff. So it is huge and an essential part of what makes hip hip. But the biggest thing that it does for Google and Facebook, but I'm speaking primarily about Google, is when someone fills out a form or calls, their contact information gets loaded in a practice beacon, and then it goes into what's called an opportunity card, and there will be like a page, a dashboard on in practice beacon with columns, and they'll all get funneled into this column called requested appointment. And then that's where the practices come in there. The office staff at the practice will come in, and they'll see all the contacts in there, and then they'll just go call them and try to schedule an appointment. If they schedule an appointment, they'll move them to a respective column called appointment scheduled. After that appointment, if they start, they'll move them to a column called started treatment. So what that does for us as a team, a Google team and Facebook team, is we're able to see, of the leads we got you in the last 30 days, how many of them scheduled? How many of them
Mm.
are in the scheduled column? The team moved, 7 of 10 into the scheduled column. Okay, our ads are great. Continue with what we got. 7 of 10 of our leads are in DND. So they said, do not contact us, opted out of SMS. We don't want you ever to, call us. Okay, so maybe we're targeting the wrong audience here. Maybe they no-showed. It also gives the opportunity for the practice themselves to leave notes on specific contacts for us that we will see. So they'll, for instance, in the no-shows, they could leave a comment on someone's contact card and says, this person no-showed. They called before their appointment and said they didn't realize it was a 45-minute drive. So now we know as an ads team, okay, so 45-minute drive, we need to bring our targeting in. That's a 45-minute drive that's leading to no shows. It just gives us incredible feedback. And that's where we were also able to get reports on our ROAS numbers, how much we're getting in production, how many leads did we get you this last month, and what is that going to lead in production value in that lead's lifetime. So we're able to tell you, with your $1,000 in the last 30 days that you spent, we have X amount of starts, which is $20,000 of production. So that $1,000 will eventually lead to $20,000 in production for your practice. And no one else that I've ever seen has been able to give you that accurate of data and that feedback that the Google Ads team can use, and then further refine our intent, landing pages, ads, strategy, everything based on the feedback that we get.
I love that because it's a proactive relationship.
For
It's
sure.
like a marriage, essentially. Like if I, got married, which I'm married to my wife, of course. That was a weird way to say that. But like if I came home today, we got a 3-day weekend coming up, and the whole weekend I didn't say hello, I love you, spent time with her, and all I did was go play video games or go out by myself or whatever, there would be a big disconnect and there would be a serious conversation that we would have because I wasn't intentionally spending time with her, just like we're intentionally spending time on each ad account, which I think is necessary. It's not a set in and forget it kind of thing. It's something where it's constantly getting that back and forth. It's like, oh, we're doing good here. Oh, we need to adjust, and failing fast and, learning from those situations there. And just like your 45 minutes away thing, that might not work for, a, city, an urban area or whatever, but if you are in a more rural like location, 45 minutes is nothing to
Yep.
go to the doctor. I grew up in a rural location where if we had to go to the doctor, go to the dentist or whatever, it was 45 minutes.
No, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually going to even talk on that. No, even the knowledge of this area, their proclivity is to be okay with longer drive times. You're not going to get that knowledge anywhere else,
Hmm.
unless the partner or the practice was specifically to tell you, yeah, we're people usually drive 45, 50 minutes. Now, again, they could say that, but the data needs to, we have data to accurately depict what they're willing. Sometimes the practice could say they're okay with 45 minutes, but then we actually see from the data, actually, they're okay with 45 minutes south, but to the north of you, they're not, because there's a bridge over a waterway and they don't want to go across the bridge.
Yeah.
Um, and that's feedback that, you just won't get unless you have, like you were saying, a relationship. It's back and forth. And then another thing I wanted to touch on too about practice speaking real quick was it's a two-way relationship. So not only can we see, and the practice is providing feedback for what we can do, they're also, by what we see about how they're moving leads in practice speaking, we're able to see how well they're keeping up with their leads. So if
Mm.
we notice that, in the last 30 days all the leads are still in their requested appointment column, and it doesn't look like any action has been done to reach out to them, that lets us know that, hey, we might want to forward this to someone, or we might want to reach out to the partner and say, hey, what's going on, how can we help, how can we make sure that we're able to contact all those people in a reasonable amount of time, to make sure that we're not spending money on leads that are not going to get contacted. So it's twofold. They're able to keep us accountable on the ROAS that we're able to provide, but we're also able to keep the practice and their team accountable on their reaction time to calls and leads that come in.
Yeah, because when you really get down to it, like our ads might be doing gangbusters. Like you're getting people there, they're putting in forms or calling, they're very interested, and then you don't answer or reach back out to them in, a normal amount of time, and then they've already been warmed up. So what do? They call your competitor.
Hmm.
You've
Yep,
literally given them a warm lead off of your ad for free.
exactly. And it could be that, then they call and you don't answer. And the data shows that, like, usually if you don't answer, they'll go call right away,
Mm-hmm.
immediately. So, and now we're kind of getting into the response time, but yeah, the response time is so important. So keeping up and making sure that the practices are sound on that, and also we're able to help with our team. We have tons of wonderful people here that specialize in as being practice advisors, and helping the practice growth, uh, like, reach that next level. It really is a beautiful thing and an awesome relationship that we're able to have with practices to make sure that we're achieving our goals.
So, last question, Sawyer. If you're an orthodontist listening right now, what's the one question that they should ask their marketing agency to know if their leads that they're getting are actually real?
So number one, I think you have to self-analyze first as a orthodontist. Say, okay, what are my goals as an orthodontist? What do I want? And like I was saying, some people just want to get their name out there. But if you want more people in seats, more schedules, more starts, you really need to ask your agency that you're working for, what is my return? What is this all leading to? Can you give me actionable data that I can see that this is worth my money? And if they can't give you that data, then it might be a time to start questioning what their settings are, and then say, okay, what are we counting as a lead? And go from there. So the first question would be, what is the actionable data that you can give me on our ROAS? And then number two, what are we counting as a lead? Those would be the two questions that I would ask your agency today.
And I think that's important to know because once you're able to ask that, see how they respond. If they start getting combative, in anything like that or start acting
Mhm.
weird, then you know that you've got a relationship that you need to start pruning very, very
Yep.
soon.
Yeah. And they might respond and say, well, we promised you we'd get you 200 leads this month, and we did that. and that would be an example of a deflection, like a red flag. Okay, maybe we aren't actually doing as well as we think we're doing here.
Yeah, and it's good to always check. You know, what is measured grows.
Yep.
Well, that is our stream today. Make sure to like and subscribe to our weekly podcast, the Grow Ortho Podcast, to hear more content that can help grow your practice. And Mark Twain said it best: the secret of getting ahead is getting started. So get out there and get started making the changes you want to see in your practice now. This has been Zach,
This is Sawyer.
and thank you for watching the Grow Ortho live stream.